Hello viewers and welcome to Impeccable Testers channel. In this video, we're going to see how to build a RESTful mock service using SoapUI. And we're going to do it absolutely from scratch. We would go through the process of installing SoapUI, pick an example API resource to work with, go through the process of creating the mock service itself, write a couple of tests using JSON path set. We will go through the process of building, packaging, and deploying the mock service as a WAR file. And post deployment, we will also see how to check the service itself by monitoring the logs. So let's get started. The first step is to go to the SoapUI download site and look for the open source version. Now we're going to download the open source community edition of SoapUI. There are some differences between the SoapUI Pro version and the SoapUI open source version. But for this video, we will go ahead and install the open source community edition of SoapUI. So go ahead and click on the download button. And once the download is complete, we'll click on the executable. The installation process itself is pretty straightforward. Now, you're going to see a welcome endpoint explorer, which we're going to ignore for now. Let's get rid of that one. And on the left hand side, you would see a project section. Let's right click the project's workspace and select New REST Project. In the snap-in, we have to enter the information of the API that we're going to work on. There are so many free to use APIs out there. Let's pick one such easy to use API. I've got Open Weather Map API that looks like this. It basically takes a city as a query string parameter and returns the weather information of that particular city as JSON. Let's go ahead, copy the URI, paste it back in the snap-in and click OK. SoapUI has generated a nice snap-in for us, which clearly separates the method, endpoint, resource, and the query string parameters information for us. If we click on the green play button, the request is actually sent to the server and the response is captured back under the JSON tab on the right hand side. And it is nicely formatted too. What we now need to do is to create a test case that does this send and verify response for us. Let's go ahead, right click our project, select New Test Suite, give it a name. We have to create a new test case under the test suite, give it a name. And we have to add test steps for the newly created test case. The hierarchy goes like this. Test suite will have a bunch of test cases, and each of the test case will have a series of test steps. Let's go ahead, right click the test steps and add a new test step. Give it a name. Here we have to tell SoapUI that the test step or the test case that we're going to create is linked to the request one. We have request one mapped to test case one. Go ahead and click OK. when we click on the green play button, the request is sent to the server and the response is captured back in the JSON tab. What's special with this snap-in is we have an assertions section at the bottom left-hand corner. Let's click on the assertions section. We're going to add an assertion to verify that the response has an attribute name with the value London. Let's go ahead and do that. Click on the property content and look for JSON path match. The way we're going to identify or write the JSON path expression is to verify where this particular attribute name is located. Because it is located at the root level, we're going to say $.name. The moment we click select from current, it's going to pick the value from the previous request, from the previous response. Let's go ahead and save it. If I click the play button again, I can verify that the test case is actually passing. Now that we have built a test case for the API that we are working on, let's go ahead and build a mock service. What essentially is going to happen is we're going to point this test case that we have just written to the mock that we're going to create and run the test case. What that means is whenever we run the test case pointing to the mock, the request is sent to the mock server. The mock server handles the request and sends a response back to the test case. Let's see how we can create a mock service now. Right-click the REST project and select New REST Mock Service. Give it a name. Right-click the mock service and select Add New Mock Action. Because the original API resource type is get, we're going to leave the method type as get and mimic the original resource endpoint, which is /data/22.5/weather. Let's go ahead and type that one. If we double click the mock endpoint, you would see a snap-in like this. The dispatch type is basically the logic used by the server to determine what response is picked up and sent back to the caller. Most of the times we would end up using script. Let's go ahead and select script. By default, it generates a template out of the request that we have already added in the project. Let's look for the query string match pattern, which is right there. I'm going to copy that one and delete the rest of the logic. What I have here is basically a Groovy script that looks for the query string, and if the query string contains the word Stockholm, it returns a response called response Stockholm, and the same goes for London. Now what we need to do is we need to create a couple of responses that the mock server can use based on what is sent from the client as a part of the query string. Let's go ahead and create two responses and call them response Stockholm and another response and we call it response London. Let's go back to the original request response, copy the response and paste it in the mock responses that we have just created. So I'm going to paste it in response Stockholm. The content type is application JSON. Let's change the name to Stockholm so that we're just sure that the response is different for both the mock responses. Switch to London, change the content type to application JSON, paste the response, we now have pretty much everything that we need to start the mock service. Let's go ahead and start the mock service. To do that, simply right-click the mock service and select Start Minimized. You're not going to see anything change in the UI, but you would be able to find out the status of the mock service by clicking on the SoapUI log. Here it clearly says the mock service is running on port 8080. Let's go ahead and check the mock by using the initial test case that we have created. But this time around, instead of using the server, I'm going to use the local mock server, which is running on port 8080. If I click on the play button now and click on the JSON tab, I would still see a response. But what's interesting this time around is this response is coming back from the mock server. You can actually verify that by looking at the HTTP log there. Let's quickly change the query string parameter to Stockholm and verify that we are receiving the other response that we have configured. And there we go. We have received the Stockholm response this time. And also you can notice that the test itself has failed because the assertion is still expecting London in the response. Now that we have verified that our mock is fully functional, it's time to package and publish it. There's two ways that you can do it. You can either leave it running from within the SoapUI, like so, or you can create a package file. We normally refer to it as WAR file and deploy it to an Apache Tomcat server. Let's go ahead and download Apache Tomcat. Head to the Apache Tomcat site and download the core binary distribution and extract it to C dev Apache Tomcat. Now we're going to start the Apache Tomcat server. And the way to do that is to navigate to the Apache Tomcat folder bin directory and then run startup.bat. Well, my VirtualBox doesn't have Java Home set up. Let's go ahead and quickly set up the Java Home. Got to set Catalina Home to the directory where we have unzipped the Tomcat, and the JRE home if you're using JRE, or Java_home if you're using the JDK. Let's click on OK there. Now there is another final step before we can actually deploy the mock service. By default, the SoapUI mock that runs from within the SoapUI uses port 8080. And the Apache Tomcat server by default uses port 8080. So let's go ahead and change the server.xml for Apache Tomcat server to use a different port other than 8080. We're going to edit the server XML and look for the port 8080. There it is. Let's change it to port 9090. Save the server XML and restart the Tomcat server. Let's take this one to allow the access. Let's just quickly verify that the server itself is running on port 9090. So I'm going to bring up localhost port 9090. And we certainly have Tomcat server running. The final step in the process is to deploy the mock service that we have created. To do that, simply right-click the REST project and select Deploy as var. In this snap-in, we're going to leave all of the default settings as is. We will check everything and we will give the mock service endpoint a unique name. Let's call it weather mock service. The thing to remember here is the var file and the var directory, they have to reside within the Apache Tomcat folder. Let's click OK. Once the var file is deployed, we're going to quickly restart the Tomcat server. Our weather mock service is now running. To confirm that it is working as expected, let's create a quick Postman test. Because it's running on localhost port 9090, we're going to point to that. And our mock service name is weather mock service, and our resource name is the same that we have specified in our project, which is /data/2.5/weather. Let's add some query string parameters. In this case, we're going to pass London, and we're going to give an app ID. Let's hit send and see what happens. And there we go. We have a successful response with the name attribute coming back as London. Now, to quickly check the other response that we have configured in the mock, we're going to change the query string parameter to use Stockholm and verify that the response does contain Stockholm. I hope this video has helped you to gain some insight on how to set up a mock using SoapUI and also how to deploy the mock to Apache Tomcat server. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you.